This is one of the long part of the whole India Digital Fest. When we were sitting and designing content, I was pretty keen that we spend a lot more time than we usually do on this one subject of artificial intelligence and policy and future of artificial intelligence, and most importantly, from our point of view, India's place in that area. And that's where I had asked Mihir to look for the best experts that we could bring down here who can talk about the subject. Our objective from India Digital Fest and from Times Network is to try and make this topic interesting and bring awareness so that people start talking. We hope that over the next 1 or 2 or 3 years, we are able to sort of bring more awareness of on this very, very important subject, that it can bring, it can bring the popularity of the subject, and the awareness of the subject can bring some sort of an urgency on the political and the power basis, and people who can sort of start making decisions and policy changes which will be very, very important for our country as we are poised to take off. I mean, we always talk about this being India's decade and the next one, but there's also a period of great challenge because artificial intelligence has the potential to put us right out there, up there, or it could also be, can play spoil sport and sort of derail some of the trajectory that India is trying to, pave for itself as we go forward. The two speakers here are, well known because, they have already spoken to you and they have very, very strong points of view, and it would be interesting to see them talk to each other and sort of come out with points that would be interesting to us. And there, Mrs. Roy is with us. She's a senior advisor with Niti Aayog, which is the premier body which sort of advises the Indian government and, lays directions to policy. And I think as much as Times Network would be a very good platform or an agent to make popular opinion, Niti Aayog is extremely well poised to make the same kind of points of view within the annals, within the corridors of power, where this kind of a subject needs to be heard more. She's the foremost expert on this, and under her charge is this subject of AI data and all that goes into this particular area, and therefore we believe that her presence here was very, very important, and her contributions to this debate will be interesting. So to start off with, as I started talking about, I think, there are two parts here. And when we talk about AI, we usually start jumping towards what's called as AGI, generative or general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. And then there is AI itself, which is most of the apps, the phones, our ATC, I think even traffic, most of the stuff that we currently do, social media, recommendations, YouTube, all these have, already got AI embedded. And AI, as we currently see, the most interesting that came about 3 months back and which has got sort of taken everybody's interest is ChatGPT, and how it sort of does certain cool things. And those cool things can be sort of suddenly become a competitor to us, to our jobs, etc. So it's suddenly become very interesting. But I think those are in the area of how artificial intelligence is currently changing our lives. The other is, what is the end game of artificial intelligence if it goes unchecked and gets to a point where it becomes independent and starts thinking for itself and starts correcting itself and becomes super intelligent, and then what happens? And that's what we saw in Calum's presentation, and to some extent towards the end in Gerd's presentation as to how to do, what to do, and what not to do in that area. So I think without much ado, you talked about, Calum, to start off with, you talked about, the topmost companies which are countries which are in this space are US and China, and they are the topmost because there is nobody else anywhere close to them. In fact, it's a clump of other countries which are in the 0 to 20 scale, which I saw in your graph, and the rest of them are in 60 or 100, US being 100, China being 60. So how dangerous is this subject to be left to a duopoly? What will happen to populations and countries and corporations outside of the duopoly?
I don't think it's necessarily dangerous for people outside the duopoly if AI is mostly developed by America and China, but I don't think it's ideal. Partly because there's 8 billion of us on this planet, and really we all, or every country has a contribution to make, and it would be better if everybody was involved. Undoubtedly, countries which develop leading-edge AI will make money out of it. The tech giants in America have become the biggest companies in the world over a decade or two by exploiting that technology, and it'd be a good thing for other countries to benefit from that too. But at the end of the day, whether an app is developed or a platform is developed in Bangalore or in Beijing, it doesn't really matter to the user. We can all benefit from it. But I do think it would be a good thing if more countries got involved. I just do think a duopoly is a little bit fragile and unhelpful.
The other point that you made yesterday when we were talking was the democratization of AI, as most of them are already embedded into consumer products. Do you want to talk something about that?
Yeah, I'm sure we all take it for granted, but I still find it somewhat miraculous, the services that the tech giants provide us. If you brought somebody from the Victorian era to the modern age and showed them cars, which can get us around much faster than they probably thought was ever possible, and said to them, we'll soon have flying cars and self-driving cars, they would find all that quite amazing. But if you then showed them Wikipedia and Google search and showed them that actually we've got something pretty close to omniscience, I think that would really impress them much more. So we have miracles already, and that's great. And we're going to have even more impressive miracles as AI gets more and more powerful. Now, AI is like any technology, it's dual use. You can have very good effects and you can have very bad effects. And we have to have regard to the short-term possible damages from privacy, from bias, from lack of transparency, lack of explainability of these models, and also the longer-term dangers from probable widespread technological unemployment, which could be very good if we figure out an economy to accompany it, or could be very bad if we don't. And ultimately, as you said, superintelligence and the existential threat which that poses to us, the very good possibilities and some very bad possibilities. But we do need to, bear both of those sides, the positive and the negative. My most important priority is that more people should be thinking about this. It's clear to me that AI is already an incredibly powerful technology, and it's going to become, if it isn't already, our most powerful technology. And although there's a lot of buzz about ChatGPT and GPT-4 now, it's not top of the news. And to me, it's by far the most important thing happening in the world. And AI is going to get more and more important. Most people in the world are not paying very much attention to the rapid pace that AI is developing at. They don't understand where it's going. And I think this is dangerous. Not, and I disagree with Gerd here. Actually, I disagree with Gerd on almost everything in a very amiable way. Not because we can do very much about the course that AI will take. It will go the way it goes. But because the great danger is that we panic. If self-driving cars become very common and everybody suddenly wakes up and thinks, wow, I'm going to lose my job. If that happens very quickly with no preparation, no acclimatization, that can lead to a panic. And that is very dangerous. So my main priority is to get more and more people realizing where this exponential journey is taking us so that we have as little panic as possible.
Thank you. So, Gerd, now let us come to your views on what this holds. And I think we can move to the singularity, superintelligence part of the conversation that we were having. And you in your session that you took earlier, were talking about that computers, the AI or AGI is not going to be based in feelings and emotions and a lot of other intelligence that human beings use, and it's only going to be the intellectual or the logical part of it, and therefore it may not be the right thing to allow it to go to a certain place. It should be used as a machine and an assistant. How do you think we are poised? Because in his session he talked about red button, and he also said that it looks like people are not going to take their fingers off it. which means that red button is going to be pressed. And you said we have to not press it. How do we sort of really get there?
Okay.
You know, your talk was very, very persuasive, extremely convincing, but I was, you know, after that thinking, how logical and how real is that it's going to be even possible to control it?
Okay. Well, first, I think that there's three topics that we need to examine and collaborate on a global level. First is climate change and energy. Yeah, we can't solve that in one country. This is something we have to do together. The second one is intelligent machines that are beyond the, you know, fancy software, what I call IA, right? Intelligent assistance. That's not per se dangerous. That's just a job factor, and it changes society. But a machine with an IQ of 1 billion, in the sense of logic, that is much more dangerous. So when we talk about this AI discussion on a global level, we need to think about IA, you know, everyday thing, AI, which is better than that, and then general intelligence, which is a system that's a lot like a human, and also has a lot more capacity. That is the part where we're probably going to need a moratorium of a sort, because that is extremely powerful and has lots of military applications. Okay. The third thing we have to collaborate on is genetic engineering of everything, but also of humans, which is also, of course, based on AI. So to me, the climate change thing, we're doing that, we can solve it, that's my view. It's desperate, it's emergency, but we're going to solve it. Right? On the second part, we're nowhere close, and that is a big mistake. Because to me, I think Calum agrees on this, this is a much bigger topic in overall dimension. Is what we're going to do with ourselves, how we're going to be humans in the future based on technology and based on genetic engineering. Right? So what makes me hopeful, however, is that we have in the past proven that we actually do collaborate as humans when we have a good reason. Nuclear, we had 2 bombs, we collaborated. Right? Financial crisis, COVID. So I do think that we're at the point where we're seeing with ChatGPT what the power of this could be if it became more intelligent. And that will give us reason. I think we should not feel disempowered to actually do something about controlling it or convening something that will make us get the benefit without getting the advantage. And the problem that I'm seeing primarily also in India, but also worldwide, is the business of replacing humans with machines is a huge business, right? And it creates trillions of dollars. And the business of essentially creating machines that can be like humans is probably the biggest business per se. And it's a huge temptation. And we should resist the temptation to just go ahead and make money and then deal with the damage later. That may not be survivable. So I think this is the moment to think about how much do we like just growth, or how much do we like something larger than growth?
So I think, Calum, before we go to Anna, do you really think that this control is possible? And second is, you talked about the difference, similarity between human chimpanzee and super intelligence and human. How much control do we have, and what would be the real consequence? And do you really think it's going to be sort of possible to stop it and touch upon transhumanism, as you said yesterday?
Short answer, no. I don't think we can control superintelligence. I don't think we can create it in a way that it's aligned before it becomes superintelligence and then remains aligned with our values and interests forever afterwards. I don't think that's possible. And I don't think we can control it after it exists. How can you control an entity which is 1 million times smarter than you? I just think it's impossible. Now, there are very smart people. There's about 300 very smart people in 4 existential risk organizations around the world working on exactly that problem. And most of them are a lot smarter than me, and I wish them Godspeed, and maybe they will come up with a solution. But to me, it just looks impossible. It's like an ant trying to control a human being. I just don't think it's possible. So, sadly not. And then you asked about transhumanism. Shall I?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. So, the area where Gerd and I most like to disagree friendlily with each other is over transhumanism. Transhumanism is the idea that humans should be allowed to augment ourselves cognitively and physically as far as the technology will go. So if we can make ourselves immune from aging and immune from death because we're immune from aging, that would be a good thing. Death is a bad thing, so stopping death would be a good thing. Stopping having diseases, making ourselves stronger, smarter, wiser, able to jump over tall buildings. I think all this is a good thing, and that's why I'm a transhumanist. Gerd thinks that there's a certain distance you can go down that road, and then we have to stop because we cease to be human at that point. And the nub of it is, I think, this. And this might be a bit unpopular, I don't think being human is the most important thing about us. I think the most important thing about us is our minds, our consciousness, and if we port our minds, our consciousness into machines, for me, that's absolutely fine. I don't think I would be human. If I did that, I'd be a post-human, and I would actually prefer that, because to live for thousands and thousands of years in a state of constant bliss with opportunities that I can hardly even imagine now, that sounds great to me.
Now, these sound quite bewildering, intimidating, to say the least. And we, with 1.4 billion population now, I think April 13th, we're going to be the largest populated country in the world forever in the future that we can think of, because China is going to drop after that. And if India is going to be that. India also prides itself on right now being the 5th largest economy, and by 2030 we are expecting to be the 3rd largest economy. And obviously, as we catch up on our average per capita GDP, we're going to be going to the 10 and 15 trillion size, which means we are going to be the top 3 players in the world, which gives us negotiating ability, and which also gives us a responsibility that we should be a player in this. Now, what is the Indian government in this space? Where is it the Indian government with reference to supporting research, etc. on AI? One. Second is taking a cue from what Gerd said, and if we were to sort of mobilize humanity to come up with a cooperative act like the nuclear moratorium and referendum, etc. that we had. Isn't it a very, very important opportunity that India has right now to be able to sort of be that leader and probably sort of look at other countries, which are obviously smaller than India from a collective bargaining point of view, and become the leader to start putting these limits out there?
Just a brief comment, and then I think we should go on, yeah? So, the key question, in my view, is not, when we look at the future, not about what is possible. The answer of that is pretty much anything is possible. Right? Can you upload your brain to the internet? You can kind of do that today if you have, but in 10 years, probably. Right? The question is not what we can do, but what we want. Who do we want to be? Right? And this is the key question for India, in my view. The question is, what does India want to be as a country, as a people, what is the nature of what you want, rather than saying this is what America or China wants, right? And the question isn't just one of wanting revenues and growth and profit and jobs, and that is a trivial question, right? The question is ultimately of the purpose, the destination, beyond all of those things, right? So that's why I say digital India, and that's all nice and fine, but you can't define a country by a tool. You define a country by culture, by people, by the purpose. Right? You can't say, well, Germany is, Mercedes-Benz or great cars or whatever. That's just not the future. I think to be fit for the future, we have to decide on what we want, and what does it mean, and what we're going to do as a result of that. Right? And that has a lot to do with what we do with technology and how we guide it. And if we do that, then ultimately it means sitting down at the table with Europe, China, US, and Africa, sooner or later, to hammer out what the rules are. That, in my view, not having rules would be the worst case. Like Calum said, we're going to become technology if we don't have rules. And I don't want my kids to be technology.
So Anna, what do you think? I mean, where is India on this, and what are India's, because you people are right there in from our point of view.
Thank you for having me here. So it's interesting that I'm on this panel with an American and a European. I feel, in this present phase of, as we call it, IR 4.0, cyber physical, first, unlike previous industrial revolutions, in this phase you need to be collaborative. You may have X number of laws, regulations in your own country, but by its very nature, this technology does not kind of, is bound by the boundaries of a country or as we know, first of all. Secondly, AI is not something which just happened last decade or past 2 decades. It has been there since the 1950s. What has made it really bring it in vogue is the compute infrastructure advancements and the data. So on one side you have the American model, which is big tech as the leaders, and through various means and how they evolved over time, they have become leaders. On the other side you have the GDPR kind of a European setup, a lot of rights to the principles and things like that. In that space, I think India with its own governance model in tech space, that is in the current phase of tech space, for the first time I think India is really kind of charting its own path. It's very interesting to hear the examples given by the other 2 speakers of driverless cars, of apps, of social media. But when we speak about AI, and as the National Strategy on AI, which Niti Aayog had released in 2018, for us, AI is what it can do to our healthcare, what it can do to our education, what it can do to our agriculture. And when we say what it can do to urbanization and transportation, it is not about driverless cars, it's about managing resources better. So with that, India has kind of proposed this new governance model of public digital infrastructure, which is also part of the 8 priorities listed by India in its G20 presidency. And here we have really kind of, allowed 1,000 flowers to bloom kind of a thing. We have an architecture of consent-based data sharing. We have demonstrated how we can make sense out of aggregation of data, of standardizing data, sharing data, whether it is logistics sector, health sector, education, or agriculture, where these are still evolving. In payments, we are now exporting it. We are going to other countries. So I think when we talk about AI in India, obviously future of works is not something which we have, have a position paper, but in other areas we have a position paper. And for India, it is how AI can help us achieve our reform agenda, promote inclusive growth, which is a stated policy objective of the government, and what government can do in leading R&D in those sectors where the bottom line approach will not determine the development of the technology. So that is the approach which government has taken, and in that regard, various ministries, states, we have a federal setup, so it's not very centralized. States are doing their program, ministries are doing their programs. AI is very, very immersive. So it's not just single, domain is very important in AI. So R&D is one, the core, the foundational development, the other is applied. So the applied part is something where a lot of focus is being given. And that is where Niti Aayog is also now trying to institutionalize a lot of stuff, in addition to responsible use of AI, where we have come out with 3 seminal papers. and really addressing it head on and giving some frameworks and suggestions. And now we are taking that dialogue forward in collaboration with UN agencies, with other countries, in global partnership, the GPA, which is there, India is a founding member. So I feel a couple of things, if I may just end this, is one, collaboration. Second, don't lose sight of what you need to achieve. Technology is there, but technology needs to be seen as an enabler. And in all this space, whether, you know, some trains just leave the station, you just have to kind of adjust to it. So generative AI, it will happen in due course. Many developments have happened in the past. When computers came, at that time also it was said that, you know, there would be a sea change and jobs will be lost. We did adjust to it. I think it's all about just adjusting to these new developments, and that is an iterative process, and that is what we are trying to do.
Thanks, Anna. Anna, you also wanted to ask a few specific questions to the panelists and to me. So if you want to sort of, I would invite you.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
A quick comment. I understand the agenda. I think what is happening, however, is that India has entered the exponential era. Okay? So we are going not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going 4, 8, 16, 32. We're leaping in technological application. And leaping means today we're at 4, in 14 months we're at 8. So my kids in 10 years will be at 256. Another 10 years, 1 million. Right? And this is what's happening. So we can't sit here and say we're going to take this linear approach. We're in leap age. Now, ChatGPT is one step in those leaps. Right? And here we are, and we're basically witnessing the explosion of possibilities. And we need to adjust our thinking to the exponential scale here and say, you know, if you're interested what your kids, what kind of world your kids will have, we're not talking about 50 years here. We're talking about 20 years. And so there is lots of really great potential here. As I said earlier in my speech, we have the tools, we have the science, we have the tech, we even have the money, but do we have the wisdom? Right? And that's what government is supposed to do, right? To have the wisdom to orchestrate this. It's a tough challenge, but this is really, in a big country, probably even more of a challenge than, say, in Switzerland, you know, where we have an election on stuff every 3 months, you know, to vote for particular stuff, right? But in a big country, and also I think India's potential here is clearly to take a leadership not in the tech, but in the response to the tech. Right, that is, I think, the opportunity that shapes up.
I think if we have questions from the audience with any of us, we'll be happy to take.
We've horrified everybody into silence. Shall I make a comment while we're waiting for a question to arise? I'm rather appalled to find that Gerd and I agree about something, which is the fact that we're on this exponential growth pattern and very few people are really paying attention to it. I think that is the point where all this starts from. I don't think we're going to get to a point where we can all agree what should be done and what shouldn't be done. I mean, there's 8 billion of us. We have so many different opinions. Why should we think we're all going to come to a democratic agreement globally, for instance, that it should be possible to live for 100 years, but it shouldn't be possible to live for 200 years, or it should be possible for 200, but not for 300. I think we're going to have to accept that different people will want different outcomes, and we should try and be a bit tolerant of that. When it comes to transhumanism, for instance, if Gerd wants to remain human and doesn't want to have a lifespan multiplied by hundreds and doesn't want to lose the ability to create new humans in the traditional way, which is the definition of human, if he wants to stay human like that, I've got no problem with him doing that. I would have a problem with him saying that I can't have a much longer lifespan and live in, say, a virtual world and become post-human. I don't think I should be stopped from doing that. So I think we need not to find a global agreement about what technology should be used and what technology shouldn't be used. I think we're going to need to be a lot more tolerant of different outcomes, different choices.
Okay, I can respond to that briefly only. I think when we talk about this, what I call the good future, right? The idea of what good is, right? This very basic stuff: work, jobs, having kids, being able to self-realize, to not die, the basic stuff, right? We need to define that as the sort of bottom line of what we want together. And then there's lots of optional things, like, extending your life if you have lots of money and things like that, And some people will always do things that aren't legal and do it anyway, right? But I think it's important that we get on the same page for energy, climate, machine thinking, technology, and human engineering, because these are very, very powerful things that will change everything. So we can't just, the American way of doing this is to say the market will do it, right? And look where we ended up. Okay, the Chinese way of doing that is the state will do it, right? And look where we ended up. So Europe has a different approach, which I like, which is more of a people approach. Yes, it's cumbersome and all of these things, but that's kind of democratic, a little bit like India. So finding a consensus will not be easy, but we have to only find it on the bottom level. And I tend to say that we will probably agree on a lot of bottom levels if they are wide enough. I mean, this is what you do in the democracy, right? You don't define every single piece of, whatever you can be or want to be. You define the bottom line. And I would say that if we're going to be at a place to where we say that we have to become one with the machine so that we keep existing, that is not a bottom line that most people will agree on. I don't have that feeling about India or about Europe. So that's just what I think is implausible. And also, I have a lot more belief in humanity that we can actually get together and figure this out. History has proven, in fact, when the pressure is big enough, we take action. Right? And that pressure is building like crazy. I was saying about what you said earlier, right? In the next couple of years, there's going to be a huge pressure cooker on these topics, here and everywhere else also. And we have to get to a place to where we can openly discuss possibilities. And we're going to need a moratorium on how exactly we will have intelligent machines as a prosperous thing and how we will not have them, just like nuclear power.
I just hope that we get to a point where the pressure is not, lethal, but good, enough to sort of make us all take the action. And I think with that, if there is a question coming up, oh, there are questions. Okay, yeah.
Mr. Chace, good evening. Further on to the conversation which we were having, so we totally understand that responsible AI is what we have to be looking at, because what is happening is inevitable. It has to happen. So the way we have got ISO standards for everything, right? I'm in the military. We follow MIL standards. And why we follow that is so that there is standardization, we understand each other well, and there are no surprises. So I would like to hear your comments on what you feel of some kind of standards, maybe ISO standards for artificial intelligence.
Well, in terms of bringing products to the market, then standards will be necessary so that products are interoperable. I mean, a great example is the metaverse. If and when we get it, it's been touted for a long time, and it was supposed to come in 2016, and then it was supposed to come last year, and it'll probably be supposed to come again in 5 years' time. Eventually it will arrive. And it would be a much better world if people can take their avatars from say, Facebook's metaverse into Microsoft and then into Google's. That would be a better world if it's like the internet, rather than like the smartphone world, where there's only two ecosystems and you're pretty much locked in, or even worse, a monopolistic ecosystem where you only have one that you can live in. So those standards in those sorts of areas are important. But with AI, it will transcend standards in many ways, because it's intelligent. You know, our intelligence is the thing that makes us the most powerful animal on the planet, and it's very hard to reduce it to standards right across the piece.
I can take two questions. Yeah.
Can I make a quick comment on the standards?
Yeah, since we are talking about AI, and AI is a kind of, thinking machine, and so basically it has a thought process. So we have to see what kind of ideology it follows, and that's why everyone has a say in it, and also we have to see who is controlling that AI. Right now you just told that there are duopoly and a few players in the market who are generating these AIs. So basically they are the brains or the thought process behind those AIs. And to have it a kind of, democratic AI, obviously India should also be on the table and should start thinking what kind of ideology it can feed to the AI. Thank you.
Thanks. Maybe Gerd can answer that. Or
Well,
respond to that.
There's no such thing as a thinking machine, right? This is IBM marketing idea. It's a good idea, actually, but there's no such thing as a thinking machine, because when you think about how we think, right, we don't agree on a lot of definitions how all that works, but machines think in their own way, so we shouldn't use the word thinking, right? Like machines are intelligent, smart, whatever they are, but they're not like us, right? And it's important to realize the difference. Right? These are not thinking machines like we think of thinking. Right? They have their own way. They're binary, right? Zeros and ones. Right? Very important to realize the difference. That's why they're so powerful, and that's also why they're good for us. In an ideal world, we could use them to do the heavy lifting, and then we do the thinking. Right? One more thing on what was said earlier on the standards. I have proposed many times also to the European Commission to put together a system that shows how human your content is. So now that we have the possibility to create content that's not human, I think we should have a little meter that says, 10% human, 50% human, 80% was made by humans, so that we know what is what. So when I'm reading your article, it's 100% human, I'd be happy to pay more, right? So that we would know. It's like we have today with meat, organic meat and whatever you have, certification. So made by humans. I think that would be a good standard to have.
It might be a good thing, but I don't think you'll find many people will pay more for the human. If you have two articles, one written by a robot, one written by a human.
One question? Yeah.
I have a question. Which sector AI is going to impact the most, and how Web 3.0 is going to help it? And my second question is, Sam Altman, as we all know, is the CEO of OpenAI, which is ChatGPT company. He's building a doomsday bunker. What are your thoughts on that? So the two-part question is...
AI will affect every single sector. As Anna said, healthcare and education are two of the most important sectors for it to be encouraged in, and it will affect those enormously, but it will affect absolutely every sector of the economy, every aspect of life. It's going to be universal. I don't know whether it's true that Sam Altman has got a bunker in San Francisco, in California. Well, I think in the past he has said he's got a place in New Zealand, or maybe that was the guy in Salesforce. But in this last interview, he did talk about having one in California. I think he thinks that's a bit of a joke, because I think he absolutely knows that if we get a rogue superintelligence which really decides to wipe us out, we're going to last about 5 minutes, and it doesn't matter where you are, we're gone. I think he's pretty optimistic that's not going to happen, and let's hope he's right.
On the sector thing, quick answer. The key sector to me is healthcare. Healthcare has been so devoid of using data, and healthcare is really sick care, right? So people get sick, we give them pills and injections, and off you go, right? That's not good. Healthcare is going to be completely redone with technology, analytics, smart technology. We're going to analyze everything. We're going to understand everything. We may get away from the pills. We change our lifestyle. This is a 10-year process. If you're a healthcare company, you're becoming a tech company. That's basically what it is.
I think that's about it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, madam. You've been a great audience. Thank you.
Thank you.